Having me, Trace.
It's fascinating when you look at the movie and you look at the timing, how this worked out. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Well, Dennis Quaid is taking on perhaps the biggest role of his career, playing Ronald Reagan in the movie Reagan, the upcoming drama based on the life and times of our 40th president. I had the chance to sit down with Dennis Quaid at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley to talk about his new project. Dennis, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Trace.
It's fascinating when you look at the movie and you look at the timing, how this worked out. I mean, it's kind of amazing because we know that it got stopped a couple of times because of COVID. You started shooting this back in 2020.
Right.
Here we are in 2024, and it's being released at this unbelievable time in politics. Maybe the most historic time in politics we've seen.
I had one kind of maxim in my mind was that please don't let this movie come out during an election year.
Fantastic movie.
And because I didn't want it to be perceived politically or used that way, but the world has really changed. It's turned upside down and then turned right side up again since we started making it. And it turns out it's coming out in an election year, and it's a great time for it to come out. And so what do I know?
It's kind of interesting. You said that you didn't intend, or you and your team didn't intend for this to be a political movie, and now it's an election year. I'm wondering what your takeaway, what you intended the takeaway to be from this movie.
Well, Reagan was a uniter. He really was. I mean, there were also, he was like everybody's dad, and for better or worse too. And there were people who called him warmonger and all that stuff. But he won the Cold War and brought peace. And it's the story of a man, and one of the great men of the 20th century, and who he was at the core and what he meant to all of us. Also, people forget Reagan was a Democrat first. And there was that term Reagan Democrats back in the day, and it was also at a time, I'm sure you remember this, we had conservative Democrats, we had liberal Republicans. It was a different world where it wasn't so polarized as it is today. And if anything, I sure would like to see us get back a little closer to that.
Yeah. What do you think Ronald Reagan would make of Donald Trump?
But that is really tough. That is a tough one that I don't even know if I could answer that one.
Okay.
But it's like, we'll say this, it's Donald Trump, his principles are pretty close to Reagan in the sense of those things that he was for, and but the principles that I think, because I'm one of those that thinks that Donald Trump is actually a very principled man.
I know you have said many times.
Reagan governed by principles, and I think that's what went beyond politics.
When you're doing research on Ronald Reagan, are you reading biographies? Are you reading other people's perception of him, or are you reading all of it?
All of that, doing all of that. I read about 5 biographies on him. I lived through it those times. That was another thing. But there's came to the physical aspects of him. YouTube is a really great resource. Because all of those moments that are in the movie that are public are right there available to you on YouTube. And I use that for study his walk and the way he talked at different times in his life. His voice, when he was 35 was much different than it was when he was, we all know,
Right. Do you just said you lived through those times, so you know what it was all about. During those times, were you a fan of Ronald?
He was my favorite president, and I voted for him.
Wow.
I had voted for Carter 4 years before. This was after Watergate.
Sure.
And the things that really brought Reagan to the presidency, for me, go back to when Kennedy was assassinated. It really kind of crippled the country's spirit, I think, for a couple of decades, really. And then we had Watergate on top of that. And Carter came into office. I voted for him because basically he was an outsider and simple at the time. And then, the country went through a malaise, by Carter's own words.
Right.
That it kept going down. But along came Reagan, and he brought that spirit back.
Yep.
That's what he did, I think, for this country. And probably, as much as winning the Cold War and all that, that spirit that he brought back was just as important.
And the attempted assassination on Reagan also felt like a gut punch to the country.
Yeah, and it felt like Kennedy all over again.
Yeah.
Therefore, because we went through hours and hours of not knowing if he was going to make it or not.
Right.
And of course, not trusting anything that we were told, after we went through in the 60s. And the way he came through it, the way it changed him, I think it humbled him. And he himself said after that he really realized that his life was not his own anymore.
Yeah.
He was living by his maker upstairs.
Similar sentiment to what Donald Trump was saying in the days after the attempted assassination. Remember that Ronald Reagan, he had them roll down the window. He said, I need